This is SaaS Therapy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of SaaS Therapy, the show where we help you save your most important business relationships, your customers. My name is Todd Kirk. I'm your host. I'm joined by my ever-present co-host, Casey Trujillo, and today we are super excited.
Yes,
what?
I am a fan of that already. I had a comment right there.
Ever-present, Casey. You are always here, most of the time.
Okay, fantastic.
Even when you're not here, I feel like you're here. So,
fantastic.
So we're joined by a fantastic guest today, Jillian Betlick, who is the Senior Manager of Community and Customer Advocacy at Calendly. And we met her, well, I didn't meet her. Casey met her a few months ago at a conference, and we've been excited to finally connect with her in person and really learn from her wisdom today. So Jillian, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you on SaaS Therapy.
Thanks. Super happy to be here.
And Todd, I have to make a correction. I didn't meet her. I stalked her.
Oh,
so this is what took place. So Jillian can explain what took place is all of a sudden. So I can't take credit for this. Our head of marketing, Deborah Wilson, she had this brilliant idea. And again, feel free to steal this, people, but it takes a lot of guts to do it. That she had brought. So Deborah from our marketing team had brought this gift basket. She put it in her luggage, took it all there, wrapped it all up, super cute. Then she took a picture, called out Jillian and I think another person that was there with your team and just said, "Hey, Calendly team, your gift is here waiting for you." And she called them out on social media, I think, right? And what was your reaction to all that? I didn't even get to ask you that. What was your reaction to that?
Well, it's funny. So my employee, David, he comes up to me. He's like, guys, someone mentioned us. And he was so excited. And it was really funny because I think that was his first big conference he had ever been to. So you guys kind of set that bar really high. I'm going to need to explain to him that that's not a common tactic. But it was really cool because I had sent him around to check out all of the exhibitors and everything. And so he was like, I talked to them. They're super cool. Let's go back. And so he dragged me over and it was really sweet because you guys have kind of put two of everything in the basket. And so we ended up kind of standing there out to the side and divvying stuff up. And I took all the caramels and it was just really funny. But it was great because it kind of, it definitely didn't seem like a heavy lift for you guys to do that, which I thought was really kind of cool. A really good customer tactic actually of let us bring a few things that are meaningful and useful. But not big, expensive, everything like that. Cause anyways, very, very cool tactic. And it worked because that was 5 months ago now.
Yeah, that's right.
We're still chatting and getting to know each other. So that was great.
See, Todd, I was trying to create a sense of community, and that's why we have Jillian on today is let's talk a little community. So, Jillian, we had mentioned a little bit about, what are the best pieces of advice. So let's see if we can get to 5 of them in the time that we have today. But I would love for you to talk a little bit about community because it's funny. It felt like 2 years ago, everybody was like, community. It's going to answer everything. And then it's like, well, I don't know about community anymore. So Jillian, let's get the 5 best pieces of advice that you've received in building the community. But let's first start out with why should you have a community? Why is this so important? What have you just learned? Let's start high level and then let's dig into those 5 tips that you might have.
Yeah. So I think actually it's kind of interesting is that you say, why should you have one? That's actually the answer to the very first piece of advice. Do you even need a community? Because that is ironically what I saw during the pandemic. And it was awkward to be sitting there with all these years of experience and be seeing everyone being like, community is the answer. And I was like, yeah, but what's the question? What's the question? And so I think that's actually probably the first bit of advice is figure out first if community is the answer. That is number one. And really kind of when community is the answer is when you have a situation where there are customers out there who are eager to share their knowledge and their expertise. You have situations out there where people want to give feedback and there's no great mechanism to do that. You have people that want to learn from each other. There's all different situations in which a community is the answer. Now, if you answer the question, oh, well, I just want a place to like market or for customers to tell me how great I am, you don't need a community. And believe it or not, people have answered that before. Like there was one community I worked on years and years ago. They had already stood up the community and it was going horribly. I mean, this was incredible. It was horrible. And so I came in and I said, hey, why did you stand up a community? Like that would help me fix it. And they were like, well, we wanted customers to come in and tell us how great we were. Now, mind you, this was a tax preparation software. So like there was a wee bit of a disconnect there between like reality and what they were planning on doing. And so if they had asked me ahead of time, I would have said, no, you don't need a community for that because it's not going to happen. The irony is that once we fixed it, the community went great because we built up spaces that the customers actually did need, places to get answers, places to share clarification, all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's number one is know why you need a community and build accordingly.
Okay, I love that. That's really good advice because I have definitely seen that in different companies I've worked with. That story seemed to repeat itself a lot. So I'm curious on that piece of advice, Jillian. Is there a situation where you think that you need a community because you've answered those questions and maybe you've even answered that incorrectly or you've answered that correctly, but it then turns out that maybe you were wrong, meaning like, oh, I think I have a whole lot of customers who want to share insights with the community. I think I have a lot of people who want to connect with us in a deeper way. And then it just turns out to be wrong. Is that common? And if so, how do you predict that so you avoid investing in the wrong solution early?
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things I call myself on the internet a lot is a community nerd. You may have seen that somewhere on my LinkedIn and stuff like that. So I'm going to go full out nerd for a moment here. There is this wonderful professor and researcher. His name is BJ Fogg, and he wrote this book called Persuasive Technologies. I adore this book. It is such a nerd book. It is not like light reading. It's not fun reading. It's not beach reading. This is like scientific reading. But one of the things that he talks about in there is this concept of that motivation and effort have to match impact and outcome. So if something is too heavy of a lift and you're not going to get a significant enough of outcome, you're not going to take the effort and you're not going to find the motivation to do that thing. And this is a really interesting thing because I've noticed sometimes with communities, let's say, for instance, it's a very complicated product. Like it is something where it's just way too many different things going on. There's way too much complexity. No one can ever be a master of the product. You're going to notice you have a lot less super users. Your community is going to be a lot less active and things like that because it's so hard to engage and it is so hard to feel like you're making a dent on the internet. Whereas when you have something where it's very easy to talk about it, it's a lot easier to have an active community and you'll see more people participating and everything like that. To kind of give you a really goofy example of this, it's not related to work, it's actually related to my personal interests. I have a Forerunner as my vehicle. I love my Forerunner. And I'm also working on taking classes so I can get certified in various aspects of wine expertise. Very different things, right? Super, super different. Now, there are subreddits for both of these things, and I would venture to guess that there are probably more people out there drinking wine in the United States than there are people driving Forerunners. Yet, the Forerunner subreddit is significantly more active and more approachable and more accessible than the wine subreddit. And that is because the wine subreddit has a very high level of expertise and you'll get picked on if you don't say something smart. Whereas the Forerunner, you can come in and be like, guys, look at this sticker. I love my sticker. And so it's a very interesting example of where if it's very easy to participate and it's very easy to get the outcome that you're looking for, which Reddit, we want upvotes. We want nice comments. It's a lot easier to participate in the Forerunner subreddit than it is the wine one. And companies are just like that too, which is why you tend to see companies like Try to think of some good examples, like Adobe, for instance. Lots of
Hmm.
people use Adobe, and Adobe people tend to be really good at what they're doing. Like they're going to know Lightroom, they're going to know Photoshop. I had the same thing when I was at Autodesk. Like we knew our software, we were proud of our expertise. It was easy to become a master of it because that was our jobs. Whereas, ironically, Calendly and Zapier, the company I'm at now, the company I was at before, they're very difficult to actually become experts in the product because they're very transactional.
Hmm.
Zapier had over 6,000 different partners. So you really have to stop for a moment and say, am I going to get the outcome that I want based off of the motivation and effort going to be required of my potential community members?
Dang. That's nuggets right there. And Todd geeks out on that book too. He tells me that stuff all the time when I'm like, "Hey, I want to do this or I want to do that." He'll draw the little grid for me and do the whole thing.
Ah,
So yes,
there you go.
I have two nerds in the room with me today. This is fantastic. I love it. Jillian, that is so good. I was listening to one of my favorite podcasters. His name's Ed Milet. And he always says, "Hey, if you want to improve the quality of your life, improve the quality of the questions you ask yourself."
Yes. Yep.
So I love how you started out with that tip, and then you moved to this tip. What would be your third tip in creating a community? What's the some of the best advice you've received in doing that?
So this is going to sound like a weird one, kind of going off of like the expertise thing. The next bit is you don't need to be an expert in the community that you're moderating or managing. You just need to be passionate and need to be an enabler. Um, because if you think about it, think about all the communities we're out there running. Like, for instance, I am lucky in that I actually do like Calendly the product. I do use Calendly the product. But can you imagine being a community manager for a company where you don't even use their product? There's no reason you would use their product. I mean, like for instance, especially in like the medical industry, you're like, I don't have a pacemaker, yet I'm a, community manager for a pacemaker community or something like that. But the reality is that we don't need to be experts. We have to surround ourselves with experts. We have to enable our experts. We have to be empathetic to our users who are trying to interact with people who know, a lot more than they do. We're facilitators. We're not subject matter experts. I mean, we're subject matter experts on community, but we're not subject matter experts in the thing that we facilitate. And I think a lot of people get that confused. And I think it's also important to know this because sometimes you can pigeonhole yourself into being like, well, I was an expert in this thing and now I'm not because I went to a new company. Um, and it's instead you have to really lean into like, no, I'm a community manager and I could facilitate a conversation about ice. Like it doesn't matter what it is. Like I could facilitate anything because I have those skills. I'm not an expert in the product. I'm an expert in community management.
Okay, I like that a lot. It's interesting. My background, a long time ago, I used to spend a lot of my time in professional services doing on-site like workshops with leadership.
Yeah.
And when the program that we ran and the people that we would hire, we called them facilitators instead of trainers or consultants. And the reason being
Yes.
was because what tended to happen when you are a trainer or a consultant is the assumption is you need to be the person who knows everything. And the goal was that when people asked you questions, your job was to, know the answer, be the sage who's just like the guru at the top of the mountain that everybody finally found their way to. And so by calling them a facilitator, the first thing we would do when someone had them ask a question was instead of saying, well, here's the answer, let me tell you why, we'd say, that's a really great question. And then open it back up to the rest of the group. What do y'all think? How would you approach that? Or, I was talking to so-and-so the other day and this is what he said, hey, do you want to share your thoughts with the group? And it changed the tone of those types of sessions dramatically because it puts the ownership back on the audience. And it sounds like that would maybe relate heavily to what you're saying here. So
Oh yeah.
what other things would you do to try to become a really good facilitator if you're trying to drive a community for a specific product like Calendly, Zapier, or another one?
Yeah. So the big thing is finding your champions and enabling those people. I mean, to give you an example, so every once in a while we get questions in our community about using Calendly for lawyers. I'm not a lawyer. I have no interest in being a lawyer. I took a law class in high school. That's like the extent of like my law expertise. Yet I have this incredible user who is a lawyer. He's actually a fractional chief counsel. So you can like hire him for your business, and he's your counsel guy. And he loves Calendly. He's obsessed with Calendly. Like, I mean, he's just incredible. And so one of the things we do now is when I have a lawyer come to the community and say, hey, like I have a question about da 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 whatever, I bring this guy into the conversation. And every single time without fail, he drops some knowledge that I'm just like, huh, I never would have thought of that. Like I can bring the Calendly stuff into the conversation, but he's bringing in things about how to deal with clients, how to maintain privacy, how to use Calendly and, integrations that don't even exist yet, all sorts of crazy stuff like that. And that's one of my jobs is I'm here to find those people, to enable those people, to maintain those relationships with those people. And I mean, I have like a Rolodex in my brain of people at any given time that I can pull in. And it's funny too, because actually as I've gone across my career, that Rolodex actually is huge now because I'm actually constantly connecting people from one community to another community to another community, which is such a weird thing to do. But I mean, that's kind of some of the power and the value that I bring in my profession.
That's awesome. Now, Jillian, we in our audience here, and shout out, we were ranked number 7 in as a podcast for the SaaS CRM or CSM industry. So we have all sorts of different types of customers that listen to this. We have SaaS vendors that are really large and others that are just startups. So Jillian, how do you, this might sound a really elementary question, but how do you find your champions? And then how do you reach out to your champions? And do you incentivize these champions? So I know it probably some of those answers, it depends. But, if you wouldn't mind giving some free consultation out to everybody. And if I was starting this from the beginning and I wanted to go find my champions, where am I going to go look? How am I getting that introduction? Who's helping me do that? Is the AE doing it? Is the CSMs doing it? Are you just reaching out by yourself? And then what's the reason that they do this? Is it just because they love it, or are you giving some incentive there?
All good questions. So it does depend. However, one pretty easy way to go about this is if you are a company that collects NPS, CSAT, any sort of quantitative feedback, that's a great place to start. And the reason I say that is that your oh my gosh, words. The people who really love you, your promoters, there's the one. I keep wanting to say protractors, and I'm like, that's a measurement device. That is not the word. Your promoters are fantastic people to start with when it comes to advocacy, super users, all of that type of stuff. We have actually an ongoing project right now at Calendly where my customer marketing team is actually going through all of our NPS surveys. And whenever someone is a promoter, they're actually doing an outreach to them and just being like, hey, we saw your feedback. We're appreciative. Do you have any interest in chatting with us for like 15, 20 minutes? And they put their Calendly link out there. And then people respond and they just jump on a no strings attached Zoom call. Like, hey, let's just chat. Let's just put some faces together. Like, let's just have some human connection. And then from there, we figure out what that person's interested in, if they're actually a good candidate for the things that we're interested in having them do. And then we start figuring out if incentives need to be offered. And the reason that we kind of walk in like that without, putting incentives on the table first is that people are motivated by super different things. I mean, to kind of put an example out there, like if I was to ask you guys right now, like what would motivate you to jump on a call for 30 minutes and mentor someone or teach someone, you're going to give different answers. I like getting to talk with other community managers. I like public speaking. So for me, that's kind of like an intrinsic award to get to do these things. Other people love free t-shirts. My God, some people love free t-shirts. And so it's kind of like you have to figure out what that thing is and then be able to put a value to the task. So going back to that motivation and effort thing I was mentioning earlier, if I'm asking you to just give us a one-liner quote so I can use it on my website versus I'm asking you to write a 4,000 word article and do a video with us, those are very different rewards. And I have to make sure that I'm doing that correctly. But if you lead with the rewards, sometimes it kind of sets people off on the wrong foot. or whatever you're offering isn't actually aligned with what they want. So I like to start off with a relationship, get to know that person, and then go from there. And to kind of give you an example, that lawyer that I mentioned, we know what his favorite burger joint is. So we kind of always have that up our sleeve that if he helps us with something, we can reward him with burgers. Like we know that about him. And like we actually know that about a lot of the people in relationships with. We know what their favorite restaurants are. We know what they like to do in their spare time. And we're able to do that surprise and delight, which I think is a lot more meaningful than the t-shirt's on its way.
I love that. I would guess though that have you noticed that there is a what's the right word here, like trends or connections or nodes of users that tend to fall in those types of buckets, meaning like is it different for Calendly users than Zapier users than Autodesk users, given the fact that they're so different personality wise or people in the job that maybe the things they care about are different? Or is there some other factor like, oh, well, I know that if you answer it this way, you're probably going to fall more in this category. So therefore, whatever, or like you work in this segment or this size of a company. Maybe you don't have that data, but it just gets me curious of, have you noticed anything trend wise as the types of champions that you have? And if there's any obvious things that help you better know what they care about?
I've spent my entire career trying to figure that out. And no, I don't have an answer. The only thing I can say is that I have definitely noticed that academics and like really nerdy people tend to be far more intrinsically motivated. We tend to just like to hear, like, have people like respect our knowledge. This is kind of weird to say that. I've come across that a lot. I've also noticed it's interesting. It's not so much the nonprofit group, but there's a very specific group of people that, like, if someone tells me that in their off time they coach like
Mm.
kid softball or something, I know that they're not going to want swag. I've always noticed that, which I always think is really funny. Most of my super users have actually, I'll say that most of my super users have been intrinsically motivated people, whereas most of my social media kind of collaboratives have been extrinsically motivated. So, not a rule. I wouldn't say it's like a universal thing, but uh, it's interesting. Someday, like, ask me in like another 20 years, I'll have it figured out. But right now, I don't.
Well, I like it. And, I'll say, I think my favorite part of the answer there is that we also learned a little bit about you. You bucketed yourself in the intrinsically motivated camp. So now we know that we just need to send you a really thoughtful email afterwards saying how appreciative we are for your knowledge that you shared with us. And apparently that's all we got to do, and you'll be happy. So
That is pretty much the truth. No, I mean, I actually go out of my way to try to do like a call a week with people. Like I do like mentorship calls and referral calls and all sorts of stuff like that. And people are always like, why? And I'm like, well, do you know how exciting it is to not have to explain my job for a moment and just like have people like want to learn? Like, I think that's pretty cool. So
Oh, that's amazing.
yeah.
Okay, Jillian, so we've covered so much so fast. And here's a question. It's a hard one. Okay, it's a
Oh
really
boy.
hard one because we've had other guests on here that have been over community, and I've asked this question, and just not a solid answer. I'm going to be honest. So I'm counting on you to deliver this.
Okay.
How in the world do I measure success with a community? How do I really do it?
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing is you have to know what success is for your organization, not your community. You have to know for your company that the community sits in what is success. I think that is the biggest mistake that I see is that people are like, oh, I run community, and they go running off with a separate group of metrics as success and all sorts of fun stuff like that. And at the end of the day, if you can't tie your success back to what matters to the company, it's not going to work. That's just the basic fact of the matter. And so, for instance, for both Zapier and for Calendly, what is success for me is the ability to make sure that we are getting information, knowledge, and inspiration out to our customers when they need it and where they need it. And if I can prove that I'm doing that, then I am successful. And right now, the efforts that support that are things like really leaning into SEO and GEO. It's things like making sure that there are no knowledge gaps. It's making sure that we're dominating release readiness and partnering with our help center. It's making sure that we're feeding both our internal AI models and external AI models. And we can see all of this working through the fact that, our support is like their CSAT is looking great. The number of one-to-one outreaches is going down, which is due to some of our efforts as well as all the other efforts across the organization. And at the end of the day, those are things that matter to the organization. Those are things that we have been asked to do. Those are things that align with our business objectives. And because of that, we can measure success. Now, what would not be measuring success is if I was to tell you, oh, our membership is up and the number of people visiting our site is up and all those things, because those actually don't tell me anything having to do with my company metrics right now. I have to look at how I'm impacting things that actually matter to the business. Did I answer it this time?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was pretty good. I don't know.
Okay.
I thought it was amazing.
Casey said it
The
up
starting
difficult,
point, I think, was fantastic because nobody has started with that of saying, okay, what is the business about, and then you were able to easily identify what your goals are, and I think that right there is it, right? Of what I've understood around community and what its capability. Do you use? So Todd gave me a chance to talk one more time. Do you use this at all to try to help close business? Is your community set up to do that? I know some people will say, hey, you know what? I know you're curious about us. Why don't you jump into our community page and poke around, ask some questions? Is that a bad idea? Good idea? Depends again, probably. But again, Todd, I won't answer after this.
Yeah. Okay. So actually, back in May at that conference that both you and I were at, Casey, the subject matter I was talking about on stage was solution engineering, using your community for solution engineering. And this is super, super relevant to this question because what happens with companies like Calendly is it's a very horizontal product. As I always tell people, we literally have one customer that uses Calendly to set up Zoom calls with goats. Like you can bring goats into your meeting for 5 minutes. They'll show up, look at the camera. You can have them eat a memo if you want, all sorts of fun stuff like that. So we got people using Calendly for goats.
I went
And
into the
then
wrong business, Jillian. That is,
you did.
I want to figure out how to set up my own goat Calendly business.
It's fantastic. I mean, this company literally at one point had feedback for us on something and they sent it to us with goats eating the feedback. And I was like, okay. So we have companies using Calendly for goats, and then we have companies that are ginormous. We're talking hundreds of thousands of employees, thousands and thousands of Calendly seats, and they're using it for recruiting and HR and all sorts of, fancy jazz. Super horizontal, right? So the problem is that there is no world in which our marketing team was ever going to be able to write enough content to answer the GOAT questions and the sales demo questions. They're going to focus on like the sales demo. Totally fair. Community is the place now where people can come in, and as they're going through their trial, their first 30 days, whatever it is, they come into community and they ask those super nuanced niche questions. And we are like, ooh, let's figure it out. Like we just love figuring out weird, wacky, unusual use cases. We actually have a rule in our community team about try to avoid saying the word no. If you don't have to say it, don't say it. And what that has meant is that we have people that probably would have bounced, probably would not have become customers, but because they were able to find something niche like them, maybe they weren't goat farmers, maybe they were llama farmers instead, true story, that they're able to kind of solve their use case and to actually become customers. So we are impacting conversion. Is there some magical number I can tell you where I'm like, oh, yes, we did 37 conversions last week? No, I can't. But we know how many views these articles are getting. We can see the impact that some of these weird niche conversations have. We've even had people mention to us in the wild and be like, I saw that post about blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like the fact that you saw that tells me that you're looking.
I think that's amazing. One of the things that I think I wonder a lot about when it comes to Casey's question there is you mentioned at the start the fact you've gone through some reorgs, and the way your job has operates on a day-to-day basis maybe hasn't changed that much, but from a success perspective, is thinking about customer experience versus product marketing, has that had a big impact in kind of some of the things that you focus on? Like maybe it's way more now about story collection and use case telling for product marketing purposes versus, oh, well, I want to make sure that this person isn't angry and frustrated and can do the thing that they need to do. Because it sounds like you still kind of care about both, but has the scale shifted a little bit in the way that you're orged now, and which one of those has become more important?
No, actually. The funny part is if you were to ask any community manager what part of the company they sit under, they'll say something to the effect of, well, technically I sit under, and they'll name a function. And then the second part of that sentence would be, but I work with everyone. We tend to be the most functionally agnostic team out there. We have dotted lines to quite literally everyone, which is really funny because we have to sit somewhere. Across my career, I've actually worked for every single function except for finance and security. I've worked for engineering, I've worked for product, I've worked for HR, marketing, CX, success, customer experience, you name it. I've worked with everyone. I think there's kind of some core responsibilities that we have. I mean, it is our job to interact with customers. It's our job to make sure that, feedback and information and knowledge isn't getting stuck. We're facilitators, we're enablers. There are definitely sometimes, barriers or borders that definitely get knocked down when we move into a specific function. So for instance, like customer marketing has become a bigger focus for me since I moved. But it was already something that we were working on. In fact, we just formalized it now instead of kind of having that weird squiggly dotted line. I'm still working a ton with my CX counterparts. Just last week, I was actually in Atlanta at a hackathon and innovation expo working with my engineering and product peers. Like, I work with everyone except for finance and security. And that's by choice. Like, I love you guys, but finance means that you're asking me how much something costs, and security means I'm probably in trouble. So
Jillian, let's I know you've taught me already, like, okay, well, what's the right question to ask? So I'm gonna throw away everything you've told me to ask you this question.
good.
Where should it sit? If you had a choice, all things are equal, and you get to be master of the universe for a day, and your first order of business is you get to decide for everybody where community should sit. Please tell us where and why.
Where
And
and why?
you can't ask like, well, what's that company's in it? You are the master. You get to decide. There's no objections to you.
I am the omnipresent guru today. I think I think where I've been hoping this would go, and I think it will happen at some point in the next few years, is I think companies need to start considering having like a customer engagement or a higher level customer experience team. And that is something that holds social, help center, customer education, and community. Because when I look at these specific teams, they have to work with absolutely everyone. And I think that by having them in specific functions, I think it tends to color what they're expected to do. Instead of where if you just have them at the very, very top level, like the same way we treat engineering as a function or security as a function, I think we need to have a agnostic customer experience or agnostic self-serve or something along those lines. And frankly, I'm angling to be like the chief whatever of that when that comes around. Hasn't happened yet. I'll keep trying.
Well, I think you should just update your LinkedIn profile to CWO already. Why not? That sounds great. Chief of whatever officer sounds fantastic to me. So
I like it.
So, Jillian, are there any other bits of advice that we've missed that we should hit on today, as far as other things that you think, if you really want to be successful in this world, you should be doing? Well, I mean, we've talked about a lot of really good stuff, right? Know why you're doing it. Know what the organization needs. Find your champions. I love this point about working with everyone. What else would you add? Is there anything else that we're missing that we need to add in here?
So I think kind of more on a professional level, like a personal professional level, I think I would caution people, I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, oh, I want to be a community manager. And I'm always like, why? Why would you do that to yourself? It's a very weird profession to be in. Um, you're dealing with, you wear all the hats, which can be very exciting. I mean, for someone who has ADHD like me, that's great. Like I don't have to spend any more than about 7 minutes on something before I can get distracted and jump on something else and then jump back to the original thing. It's excellent. But it is a very context switching heavy position. You are dealing with people, you're dealing with data, you're dealing with design, you're dealing with psychology, you're dealing with anger, you're dealing with empathy, all of these things all the time, every single day. I think it's a great position for some people, but I wouldn't say it's like, I think sometimes people get it confused with other positions where it looks like it's fun and it's not. It's not that it's not fun, but it's not fun for everyone. So I think that's kind of like piece number one. I always tell people, know your why. Why do you want to be a community professional? And then like really hone into that. The other thing is that there is no one right path into this. My background is actually in architectural engineering. Like I'm actually an engineer by trade. I know how to make buildings stand up. A lot of people I run into come into this from education, marketing, English majors, psychology majors. Like there is no one degree that takes you into this. I think take whatever unique skills you bring to this industry and lean into those really, really hard. Like I tend to approach things with a engineering brain, very problem solving. I also don't think that anything's impossible. Like I love just like leaning into a problem and being like, what can I architect? What can I invent to answer this? So yeah, that's probably like the big stuff there.
It's amazing. Jillian, we've talked about so much today. And as I'm reflecting about everything that you've talked about, there's one last question that we need to ask because we've stayed on the positive side.
Yes.
What is the worst piece of advice you've ever received in starting a community?
Oh,
Oh, there's a lot. You're going through a lot of things.
Yeah. Okay, this is going to sound like a really negative one, but I think the worst advice I was ever given was permission to stay in my lane. And I was kind of like, but what is my lane? Like, I don't know. And like, I feel like that tends to come up a lot with community professionals where we're told, hey, you're not marketing, you're not social media, you're not product, you're not this, you're not that. And you're like, no, I'm all of those things. Like I have to be all those things. And so I think sometimes it's you've got to figure out your comfort level and kind of go from there and be like, I'm not here to muck around in your lane. I'm actually here to help you. I'm here as an enabler. I'm here as a facilitator. Use me for that. I've definitely had a few people tell me that across my career, though, of kind of like, get off my lawn type of behavior. And you're like, I'm not here to hurt your lawn. I'm here to make it look pretty. So.
I love that. Now I'm trying to think the whole time. All I could think of is like, well, so if stay in your lane is like, well, what would it be? If you don't have a lane, all I could think of is like the old old timey turntables for trains that could like turn in circles to go in different places. You're like, no, I'm like the roundabout, not the lane. What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, it's funny that you mentioned that because here at Calendly, so I'm coming into my third year of running community, and every year I've picked a theme for a strategy. And the first year was community as a welcome center. The second year was community as an experience guide. And the third year, I think we're going to do community as a growth engine. And all of those are that turntable, if you think about it, because we're basically taking things in and setting them off on the right direction. We're there as an amplifier. And so that's kind of what's interesting is I think a lot of functions run as swim lanes. Community doesn't. Like we're an amplifier, we're a bridge, we're a welcome center, trampoline, whatever analogy you want to use.
Yeah, I love it. I'm a fan of analogies. Trampoline sounds fun too. Why not?
It does. It does.
So,
I mean, it is super fun. And plus, like trampolines are fun because the more people get on the trampoline, the higher you get to go. So, like,
that's
yeah,
right.
community.
You just hopefully nobody breaks their legs in the end. As long as we play safe, it'll be great.
Yeah.
On that point, Jillian, one of the things that I always wonder about with communities is So one of the things that's hard, right, is you want to create a space where people are talking and feel comfortable sharing. And that means that you might have people who are not sharing things in a super positive and happy and fun way. You already
Yeah.
mentioned the fact that that can be difficult. How obviously the good news is we've already addressed, like, you should be a facilitator, not a person who has all the answers. So I think if you take the logical answer there, it's like, well, I don't have to be the person who fixes everybody's woes. But what do you do if you're dealing with a customer who comes into the community and is using it as their dumping bag for all of their baggage and frustration and pain? And, you want this to be a fun and helpful and good place, but it just becomes the place for the curmudgeon who's always complaining. How do you address that? And what do you do for the really loud negative voices that you want to try to help when you're trying to help shift that perspective and turn them off back on a better path?
Yeah, that definitely happens. And there's a few things. Is first off, don't take it personally. We have a rule on every team I have managed. We always have the rule of, if you need to go outside and touch grass, hug a tree, scream into a pillow, whatever it is, go. And the reason being is that they don't know us. Like, yeah, I am Jillian. I run Calendly community. I've answered a few questions today. I've done my absolute best. Have I been told? I haven't been told today that I'm an idiot or anything like that. There's still time. It's only 3:45 in the afternoon. But if someone does come back and they're like, you suck, I hate you, your product sucks, you're a terrible coder, they're not talking to me. They're talking to the product. And so I think that's number one, is don't make it personal. The moment you make it personal, you're going to let your own emotions get in it. And when your own emotions get involved, then it's a lot harder to empathize. The second thing is figure out the why. Why are they saying this to you? Why are they upset with you? I know it seems really dumb to say that, but like, for instance, this product, whatever product is they're trying to use, is integral to them getting their job done. This is a huge deal to them. Even though it's only one question for you, this might be the thing that has completely eaten their entire workday, all the revenue for the day, everything like that. And so you have to have that empathy and say, I understand why this is a big deal for you, and I am going to help you try to figure this out, and meeting them where they're at. That's the other thing I think I've learned across my career, is that a lot of times companies, they got their voice and tone guides and all that fun stuff, and I throw those out the window. Sorry, Calendly. But I throw that out the window because I talk with my customers. I don't talk to my customers. If someone comes in and they are like, super pumped up and jazzed up, I meet them there. Like, I'm like, yeah, this is great. If someone comes in angry, I'm not going to meet them with anger, but I'm going to meet them with empathy, and like appropriate empathy. Not going to do the whole, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm going to meet them in a way that's constructive and helps us move forward. And so those are the big things. But the big thing, though, really is, end of the day, it's okay to walk outside. It's okay to scream into a pillow. I mean, I have a stress ball on my desk for a reason. I absolutely do use it. It's okay to do that. Like, it is okay to say, this isn't about me. It's not my problem. I do have to answer the question, but they're not angry at me as a person. They're angry at the product.
Well, great advice, Jillian. You've given us a lot to think about today in this episode, and I get the pleasure of asking you the last question here. In SaaS Therapy, we call it SaaS Therapy for a reason, that we want it to be where you're in a virtual couch and you're going through your woes and you're hearing this person talk to it and you're getting some answers. So we always like you to be the therapist at the end and assign out a homework to our audience. If there is one thing that they could action on off of everything we've talked about today, what would be the one thing that you would give them that homework assignment to go do?
This could sound so therapist-like. So it's a two-piece. It's like 1A and 1B. First off is know your company's why. If you're thinking about running community or you already have community, go write it down. What's the why? Why do you have community? Why do you need community? Whatever it is. And then the second one is your personal why. Why in the world are you doing this? Why are you doing this to yourself? Why do you keep doing this? It's kind of like your North Star. I'll say, like, for me, for instance, this is a really goofy one. Years and years ago, beginning of my career, I was at a conference and there was some amazing speaker. Can't remember who it was, but anyways, and they were talking about wanting to be a billionaire. Not a financial billionaire, though. They wanted to be someone who over their lifetime had helped or positively impacted 1 billion people. And I was like, damn, I'm stealing that. And so that has been my goal is across my community career to try to positively impact 1 billion people. That's my why. That's why I keep showing up, doing the darn thing. That's why I'm still in community after almost 20 years, because I'm not at 1 billion yet.
Well, I love that. Hopefully you impacted 2 people today who are listening to you in this conversation and anybody else that this conversation touches. So every drop counts. Jillian, thanks
I
again
think
for
she hit 1
joining us.
billion today, Todd. I think after this episode gets released,
We have 1
she
billion
hit it.
listeners here
Then
at SaaS
retire.
Therapy.
Retire now. You did it.
Yeah, we have 2
Trillion.
billion actually, so did it.
I'm retiring. Thanks, guys.
Jillian, thanks so much for being with us today. If anybody wanted to get in touch with you after the fact, what would you recommend?
LinkedIn. Just find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Jillian Betlick on there.
Or if you're a Calendly user, go to the community. You can find.
Yeah. If you're a Calendly user, come find us at Calendly Community. Just Google it. You'll find us. If you're looking for me personally, you'll find me on LinkedIn. I'm glad to chat with literally anyone about community. If you want me to send you a Calendly link so we can talk community, I will do that. So
good. Thanks, Jillian, and thanks everybody for being with us today, and we hope to see you next time. SaaS Therapy is brought to you by Brainstorm, the SaaS platform for SaaS adoption. Learn more at brainstorminc.com.